When you're setting up a training program, it's going to be somewhat useless to use if you don't know what intensity to be training at. So when we're talking about lifting weights, we are talking about essentially how close to muscular failure are we trying to take an exercise. So saying do 3 sets of 10 squats without any sort of indicator on how hard we're taking it can be, you can do 3 sets of 10 with your warm-up weight, or you can do 3 sets of 10 with the most amount of weight you could possibly do. So the way we quantify our intensity, we have 2 methods to do this. The first one is by using the RPE scale, or the rating of perceived exertion. So this is basically a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is the exercise. So 10 would be, it's literally as hard as you could possibly do it. You cannot add any more weight or do any more reps with a given weight. And then below that, it gets easier and easier and easier. So, and the other one is going to be reps in reserve, or noted as RIR. So we have rate of perceived exertion, RPE, and then reps in reserve, RIR. So reps in reserve is going to only be useful for lifting weights. You could use RPE for really any sort of physical activity. So RIR is how many reps do you have remaining before you cannot do another rep, or not do another rep using the same technique, or not using momentum or whatnot. So 0 RIR, 0 reps in reserve, is basically the same as a 10 RPE. So there is some reasons to use one versus the other, in my opinion. So the first reason being that if we are trying to prescribe a set amount of reps, we would not train to X amount of reps in reserve. We would say we want to do a set of 3 squats at an RPE 8. Now, again, obviously none of this is exact, but it makes more sense if you're trying to hit a specific rep target to not use reps in reserve, because we don't necessarily know where that might be. Same thing with RPE. We might not necessarily know where that is going to be, but again, we are going to hit a given weight at the given rep range with a specific amount of RPE or a specific amount of reps in reserve. The other thing we can do is do half, like an RPE 8.5 or an RPE 9.5. So this would basically mean if you're an RPE 10, so say we're basically maxing out a lift, whether it's a 5 rep max or a 1 rep max, whatever it may be. RPE 10 is you cannot do any more reps, and you could not add the smallest amount more of weight. You could not add 5 pounds to the bar. It's not going to happen. An RPE 9.5 would basically mean maybe we could do like a small amount more weight, but we could not do another rep. So these are kind of like small little differences, but just putting this out there so you understand how to use the system. And then RIR works better for when we're training with a rep range. So say we're doing 2 sets of 10 to 15 reps with 1 to 2 RIR. So that basically means we are doing somewhere between, we're picking a weight that allows us to do somewhere in the 10 to 15 rep range, leaving a rep or 2 in the tank without hitting failure. For the most part, for a lot of programs I write, if everyone's doing just mostly like bodybuilding style training with a rep range, I won't necessarily indicate an intensity method, because pretty much for the entire duration of the training program, you should always be training within 0 to 2 reps in reserve, roughly. Now, could there be a little bit more than that? Sure. We're not really trying to hit failure on every exercise all the time either. So somewhere in that range, 0 to 2 reps in reserve. And throughout your program, you would want to, err on the side of starting a little bit more, a couple reps in the tank, and as you kind of figure out exactly where you're at, pushing a little bit harder. There are a lot of problems with using either of these systems, mainly that most people outside of very advanced like strength athletes have a difficult time determining, well, did I have 4 reps in the tank, or did I have 3 reps in the tank, or did I have 2, or did I have 1? You really only know how many reps in reserve you will have until you hit muscular failure, in which case you have 0 reps in the tank, where you're past that if you start doing partial reps. But just something I want to make clear for anyone following my programming. Again, reps in reserve, how many reps you have in the tank before you hit failure. And again, if something does not indicate reps in reserve or RPE, then that means you're taking it to within 0 to 2 reps in reserve. That's where you should do most of your training. RPE is the rating of perceived exertion. How hard is that specific set? You can think of it as inverse of RIR, so 2 reps in reserve is an 8 RPE. But again, RPE can be used across all types of training, not just lifting weights. We can use half points for RPE, and we can also dictate a specific amount of reps to be done at a specific RPE rather than a rep range where if you want to stay in the 0 to 2 reps in reserve, the reps done might have to change because we are not able to complete them. So that's the difference between RPE and RIR. And if you see that in the training program, know that that's what that means. And if you don't see an indicator for intensity, just know that you should probably be training pretty close to failure, that being 0 RIR or a 10 RPE, or as far away as 2 from that for most exercises. If we're training like a bicep curl or a lateral raise, probably be taking those to failure at all times. Machine isolating movements, we don't have a whole lot of risk for stuff going bad. Something like a squat or a deadlift, probably stay more about the 2 reps in reserve or 8 RPE. And again, that type of stuff will be more likely to have an intensity indicator on it, just so you know what you're doing.